As many of you know, IT disaster recovery is a very broad topic, so take advantage of the opportunity to ask questions about your particular infrastructure or areas of interest. All questions will be answered in the Q&A section of the webinar. Thank you. So right now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jeff Olejnik, and Craig Boivin will also be speaking as well. So there you go.
Great. Thank you, Eric. This is Jeff Olejnik. I am the co-founder and CEO of Assurity River Group. What we're going to be doing today is, I'll be speaking a little bit about what we're seeing in terms of trends within the disaster recovery space. I'll be turning it back over to Eric then to talk about Nscale's DR as a service model, and he'll get into a demonstration as well. And then lastly, we're going to have Craig Boivin, one of our clients. He is the Chief Technology Officer at Highland Bank. He will be talking about how his firm is using DR as a service to accomplish their objective. Okay, great. Thank you. Now, most of the people on the call are familiar with our company. We have a number of clients on the call. But for those that aren't, just a real quick overview. My company was founded in 2002, and we've really been doing disaster recovery and business continuity for really over a decade. We are based here in Minneapolis, and a lot of the company, we work with all kinds of different businesses, but very strong in the financial services vertical. We work with a lot of community banks. In 2007, we actually acquired a company that had an information security practice, and it really broadened out our portfolio of services. And so now we really provide comprehensive governance, risk, compliance, and testing services. That includes things like vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. And it was a really good complement to our business continuity offering. You could advance, please. So relative to business continuity, we have got a very defined and proven process. This is all of the people that are our business continuity consultants are certified through the Disaster Recovery Institute. So this is a really tried and true process. And it's our belief that business continuity really begins with the word business for a reason, because you've got to really understand what the business objectives are for recoverability, availability, and tolerance for data loss as you start taking a look at the different solutions that are out there. Now, and so our process begins with doing a business impact analysis, and that's really to understand what the business requirements are, what's the tolerance for data loss, as well as the recovery time objectives. When we then go into the second phase and we start taking a look at what the capabilities are within a risk assessment, that's where we start seeing some disconnects between what the business expectations are and what capabilities are. If you could advance to the next slide, please. So the traditional, as I mentioned, we've been doing this for over a decade, and the traditional recovery process has been people backing up to tape. If there's a disaster, they take those tapes, they fly them to an alternate data center. Either it's owned by the organization or perhaps they're renting space or having a service contract for disaster recovery. They actually go through and restore data back on systems that at the alternate site, reestablish telecommunications, internet recovery, data recovery, and then ultimately resume the business. And one of the things that we find time and time again is that this process takes an extremely long time. I mean, it could take days, if not weeks, and this process, in most cases, doesn't meet the recovery objectives of the business. So one of the things that we see as a common problem are, first of all, in the data, advance please, whether you're utilizing backup tapes or data vaulting, and a lot of organizations are now backing up to an alternate provider for data vaulting services, or they're vaulting their data to another storage area network at an alternate site. But when you start factoring in things like readdressing the IP addressing, being able to reestablish telecommunications connectivity, internet infrastructure and data infrastructure, as well as restoring the data onto different systems, we still find that in most cases the recovery times are just unacceptable. Yes, you might be able to have your data backed up and off-site, but actually getting access to it, it just takes way too long. And it has limited capabilities because many times, things like internet infrastructure are not even considered. Next. The other thing that we see is that some of the organizations that have the budget and the support infrastructure to have a hot site where they actually are replicating the entire environment to an alternate site, they're able to enjoy the ability to consolidate high availability as well as disaster recovery. But we find that capability is not available at most organizations because it's just too darn expensive to have a hot-to-hot site scenario. And the other thing is that it's just very difficult to support. In either of those cases, what we find is testing becomes very difficult because in order to do an actual functional recovery test, it is very disruptive on the environment. And so in many organizations, there is either a lack of testing or unrealistic testing because it doesn't include all of the recovery steps that need to be made in the event of a disaster. So, next slide, what's needed? What we see is meeting with organizations, understanding what the business requirements are. What's really needed is that we need to have rapid recovery with minimal data loss, especially for your critical applications. I'm sure that there are a few applications that are essential to your business that can't be down for more than a couple hours. The second thing is that the recovery process has got to be simplified and not dependent on key individuals. There are a number of recovery steps that need to be taken, but it's got to be done in a simplified, scripted format. And there's got to be an ability to test. For a lot of organizations that are on this call, one of your requirements, not only from a compliance perspective, but from a business perspective, is that you've got to be able to prove that your disaster recovery strategy will work. And it's very difficult to do in most situations. And so what's needed is the ability to test. And then lastly is we see, just because of the expense scenario, is that most people don't have a second car or a second home in case their car breaks down. They have the ability to rent out a new car or rent a room at a hotel in case they have a disaster that affects them. The same type of model should be applied to disaster recovery. What a great scenario for having a consumption-based model. You want to be able to pay by the drink, pay when you need it, and not just have a secondary site there in case you need it. So that's really what led us to working with Nscaled. I can tell you that our business has been utilizing Nscaled's disaster recovery as a service for 3 years, and we've actually got it implemented in several of our customers' organizations, including Craig's, and Craig Boivin's, and he will be sharing with you how he's using it at Highland Bank. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric to give an overview of the DR as a service from Nscaled.
Hi, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Yeah, Nscale basically came from the disaster recovery space, approaching disaster recovery and backup in the legal community. This had a tremendous impact on on the way we deploy our solution in a private manner, having a multi-tenant architecture, and really ensuring privacy for our clients and guaranteeing that data will not be moved. This is also part of the enterprise level compliance regulations they needed to address, and that they said that they had to have us contractually obligate ourselves to determining where that data is located and not move it. This kind of evolved a little bit because disaster recovery kind of encompasses a little bit of backup as well. We have some functionality that people use for backup purposes, and they do find that ability to actually take that less critical data and use our system to kind of back it up and place it off-site. And we even got a little deeper into that side of things and having a long-term retention plan, ultimately providing a solution that will give kind of peace of mind, helping that company understand that their data is safe it's available, and as Jeff mentioned a bit earlier, it's testable, and I'll go into that a little bit here shortly. Some of the questions that we solve is this complexity surrounding DR. I think that's primarily the biggest issue, is that people think that it's really simple, but you're dealing with multiple OSs, you're dealing with a recovery time objectives, service level agreements you have to deliver to your end users, and the financial impact. The scenario that we put together is a solution that encompasses all of that, giving you the tools you need to resolve your compliance issues as well as meet those disaster recovery objectives, and at a very minimal cost to you in terms of both resources as well as dollars. I mentioned a bit earlier, Nscale's primary verticals are legal, healthcare, and finance. We're kind of born in the legal space, and that had tremendous impact on us. That's allowed us to expand into healthcare and finance because we have a very secure architecture. From an economic perspective, we see a lot of other industries growing. Manufacturing, higher education, telecommunications. That's primarily because of the economic model that we present. Like Jeff mentioned a bit earlier, it's a type of insurance policy for critical systems. You're only paying for what you need, and when you need it, it's available to you. So we guarantee that that system will be available in times of stress or disaster. That talks a little bit about where we fall in the IT business continuum. What Jeff described earlier is this potentially load balance scenario where it's very expensive. You have replication with disaster recovery in a load balance scenario. That's basically always on, zero downtime. Extremely expensive proposition. Nscale just cut below that, and we offer a guaranteed recovery time of 15 minutes per server, really allowing you almost instant recovery of servers. And in the data center, it would be allow you to probably approximately get a recovery of the entire facility within 2 hours. Then you kind of go down the path. You talk about vaulting, tape backup, which really aren't recovery scenarios. They're basically best effort. If you have access to equipment, you might be able to bring it up online, but it's really dependent on getting access to the equipment. And we all know in major events that sometimes equipment's not available or there's problems with bringing it up, and those are very difficult to fix as well. We are a recognized leader in this space. There's a recent Forrester report. Nscale was recognized as one of the leaders primarily because of this application we have, consolidating all the backup disaster recovery processes and technologies, really tailored to the disaster recovery community, allowing you to recover that environment, test it, and verify that it's operational. This is the Cloud Console. We'll be giving a demo of this at the end of the presentation, showing you the consolidation of the various technologies and automated processes that we bring to the table. And one of the things that, by making it easy, is going to ensure your success. Because during times of stress, you may not have resources available to bring a system online. And it's got to be easy to use, whether that's a junior technician or an outside consulting firm that would then bring the system online for you, or our own internal staff. But by making it simple and easy to use, we're going to ensure your success during a disaster. To kind of give you an idea, it's a hybrid model. We have a local site appliance, and this goes on-site. This is basically your first point of recovery. VMs and physical servers are replicated to it there, and we typically see maybe 90% of all recoveries are done in this fashion. A server gets knocked down, like an Exchange server goes down, but what you have is this ability to continue operations locally without failing over. Then this is replicated block level up to our remote facilities in Dallas or Ashburn, and you can perform online recoveries from the remote facility if you lose your primary site, or we have tremendous capacity in each of those facilities to run your entire environment. And this gets a little bit deeper into the way we do capacity. This is also very testable. You can test it on the appliance locally. You can also test it remotely. We have manual testing functionality through the recovery console, as well as automated testing functionality. Because we know it's sometimes difficult to spend a lot of time manually testing a solution. We've incorporated automated testing to bring the systems up, boot them, check them, send reports on a very frequent basis. We also maintain enough capacity to run the entire application stack in the remote facility during test and disaster recovery, and we actually guarantee this in our SLA. To kind of show you how it works, systems are replicated to the appliance. This can be done on a very fast interval, every 15 to 30 minutes, up to the remote facility, typically about every hour. In the remote facility, you'll have your own multi-tenant environment, private firewalls, vSANs, VLANs, and DMZ. This is entirely dedicated to your data. So it's completely under your control. Continuity storage is your bootable storage, and it acts as a very large compute grid. When you boot systems, it's in this fashion that it's doing. If you want to keep data for a longer period of retention, we move to a lower cost of storage for annual, monthly type of backup scenarios. You can recover data from those long-term storage, but you're typically not going to recover a VM from a year or two ago. We offer some highly available functionality, such as Exchange DAG and SQL clustering in Oracle. We have some specific NetApp functionality where we can natively replicate that, and we also do some physical gear hosting. So if you have a VDI environment, such as like Horizon VMware View, or you want to rack a specific VPN device to service your, to work with your service provider over the bank, we'll be able to happily rack that for you so we can stay in compliance with them. This is all tied into the disaster recovery network, and it's all very, very testable. Mentioned a little bit earlier, this is something you might want to talk to various providers on, is how they manage capacity for disaster recovery. It's typically a very gray area for a lot of companies. We state in writing that we will manage enough capacity to run each disaster recovery zone and all those customers in that zone simultaneously. The East Coast is by far our biggest zone, and we are able to actually put that in effect during Hurricane Sandy. In Hurricane Sandy, we had multiple customers fail, and we were able to run them simultaneously without preemptive access rights. And if you drill down into many cloud providers, you're going to find that they'll be very gray about whether they'll guarantee your ability to come back online. We do, and that's part of our enterprise agreement. Additionally, this allows you to test the application stack every 8 weeks, full testing of that entire system that you have hosted with us. Secondly, you can test at any time, any 2 to 3 servers. Just turn them up and turn them down. So you can actually use it as a test bed for a variety of reasons. So what I'm going to do is we're going to turn it over to Craig right now, and he's going to talk a little bit about his experience.
Thanks, Eric. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to, Eric, the slide went away here. Yeah, just go back to being the presenter, Eric. I was going to tell you a little bit about Highland Bank. Highland Bank was formed in 1943. It's an independent family-owned community bank, and we have an asset size of around $460 million, and we've got 5 branches in the Twin Cities serving our customers. Next, I'm going to go a little bit about how our disaster recovery strategy evolved. In 2006, Highland was looking at either going to SunGard or building their own in-house backup disaster recovery site. This included the mainframe as well as other servers. Through this analysis, both seemed kind of costly. So in 2008, we actually went and decided to, instead of doing that, is to outsource our core processing to Fiserv in the Midwestern region so that we don't have to worry about the mainframe disaster recovery, because that was covered in, by Fiserv. And the rest of our in-house applications that we are hosting, we were able to virtualize through this time. And we were doing a SAN-to-SAN backup to a branch that we have on site and in our facilities, and so we're doing a SAN-to-SAN backup over that time. That SAN-to-SAN backup would occur overnight, so our recovery point objective was 24 hours in that process. So in 2011, working with Jeff and his team, they introduced us to the Nscale disaster recovery as a service, and this really excited me because I did not want to make further capital investments in equipment that was just going to sit there. I'd rather do a pay by the service and not have to carry the burden of maintaining that equipment and so forth. So so in 2012, we presented this to the IT steering committee, and we got part approved as part of its IT or strategic plan and was implemented in 2012. The drivers to support this decision were the SAN replication, taking the 24 hours. This did not meet our business impact analysis. So we shortened that down to a 2-hour window. And as Eric said, you could go as close to 15 minutes, but it really depends on how you're going to store and the number of copies you want to keep. 2 hours was acceptable for our business recovery, so that's what we've implemented. We were going to make a capital investment because we had to refresh our servers in the branches or at the data center and at a recovery branch too, and those costs, if you were to average those out and depreciate them, almost worked out to a wash as related to just paying for the service of Nscale to have them do it. So it was financially, it didn't impact us at all. And then the local recovery appliance was like an added benefit because our main thought was just for remote replication. But with this local recovery appliance, if you had a SAN catastrophe, you could spin up all your virtual servers on this device and restore operations to the business. So that was very attractive. As well as it really has reduced the amount of time for my technical resources that are reporting to me to manage this infrastructure. So that was another key part of this decision because I do have limited resources here at the bank. And then, so how did the implementation go? Well, actually, the conversion went quite seamlessly. They provided excellent technical support through the whole process, and you're assigned a person that will work with you and help you go through the conversion process. And what were the issues? The issues basically were minor. We had a few issues because you have to install an agent on your VMs for this replication. Sometimes it took a couple of installs to get it to work, but we worked through that quite quickly. The other thing that you have to be aware of with this is your large volumes that you're replicating. Depending on the size of your pipe that you implement, it took us 2 weeks to get one of our large vaulting servers migrated over to their remote site. But now that we're on this two-hour cycle, we're not having any issues. Everything's updated and kept up to date for that SLA of 2 hours. And then unrelated to this, something that kind of impacted our implementation was with our WAN provider. We're having issues getting into the colo facility. So if you decide to go on this and you're going to use your WAN provider, that's one thing you should check on to make sure that that they have a presence, or you understand what it will take to get them into that facility and across. And that's basically all I have. Turn it back over to Eric and his group.
So what we want to do is open up the floor to questions for Craig. Any business-related questions or about his experience that you'd like to know. And then following this quick question-answer period, we're going to go into kind of a demo of the solution. So we wanted to see if any questions you have for Craig or Jeff or myself. So currently we have one quick question. It's from the floor. They said, how much bandwidth does the solution consume?
Right.
Craig.
Yeah, so we have a 10 meg pipe that we're doing the replications on, and that's doing all the servers for the 2-hour SLA, and that's more than enough bandwidth to maintain that. I chose to keep it as part of our MPLS network that we have with Fiserv because we can connect from the Nscale network directly to Fiserv because we're all on the same MPLS.
And this is Jeff. For our company, we don't have the amount of data, nor do we have the number of branches that Highland has. And so for us, we're actually utilizing VPN. So we're just using our existing internet infrastructure to replicate over to Nscale's data center.
So another question from the floor for you, Craig. How have you addressed regulatory compliance, and have the examiners looked at this solution?
Yes, I've actually had, since we've implemented, I actually had examiners in three separate times, and they have no issue with this. I did a risk assessment. They've reviewed those results and are very comfortable with the solution, and have not questioned me on it at all.
So another question for Craig. Has Highland Bank experienced any major outages? Have they used the solution?
Right. Knock on wood, we have not had to implement this in a production DR scenario. But interesting you say that. We are going to be doing a production test of this, because we are going to be moving our production data center. We were at a co-location busy in downtown St. Paul. That data center's shutting down, and we're moving into a new data center, Time Warner's. And so over that time, we're going to have servers spun up in the Nscaled network, so people can conduct business, and our website and everything will be present. And then we'll move all our servers over into the new local facility. But for that period of time on that Saturday, we'll be running up in the Nscale cloud.
You know, I wanted to add on to that quick question there, Craig. We have seen that people use the system for migrations as well as test and dev, because there's no fees for our solution to spin up servers, 1 or 2 servers at any time. So we find that people want to test, you know, patches and things of that nature before on their live data before they implement in production. So what they'll do is they'll spin it up in the environment on our test network, verify it's operational, and then proceed with implementing into production. I had a question for Jeff. Jeff, when you talk to your clients, how do you handle the core banking applications?
Well, that's a good question. You know, for banks that are, we actually have this implemented at a couple different scenarios. In Craig's case, he outsources to Fiserv, which is really a slam dunk, because Fiserv's on the MPLS network, all of his branches are on the MPLS network, and so is Nscaled. So if they ever have a disaster at their main facility, all of his branches will be operational for both access to the core as well as to access to their distributed systems. We also have organizations that run the core in-house, and there are a couple different ways that people are handling it with that. The first is where they may have an agreement with Centurion, for example, if they're on Jack Henry. So for their mainframe or core banking system application recovery, and then all of their Intel-based Windows systems are then on the Nscaled environment. And part of the testing then would be really just to have a VPN connection from the Nscaled data environment to the recovery site. The second and really more, I guess, attractive and highly available solution would be to actually, if you wanted to have the core banking system replicated internally, there are ways to put a secondary core banking application or core system at Nscaled, or they also have relationships with another provider specifically for I-Series recovery.
You know, I wanted to add on to that. We have a question from the floor from Steve Schmidt. Do you have a solution for the AS400? That kind of talks a little bit about the I-Series. And we've addressed this a couple times with current clients, and we can do a couple different things. We can actually rack a system, or we actually work with another service provider that supports that, and we have a back-end connection so we can deliver a total solution incorporated with the Wintel environment. And then finally, I think what Jeff expanded on a little earlier is we'll do a VPN to any service provider like Jack Henry and incorporate that into the Wintel disaster recovery environment. So we have a variety of mechanisms to handle it. We just need to kind of discuss it. And that gets a little deeper into where we go from an enterprise type solution. We've run into this before, we understand that, and we have a better way to handle it, to give you a disaster recovery as a service model, as opposed to maybe buying another system. But it's usually, again, it's a fraction of the cost of what you pay just to host that in a co-location environment. We have another question from the floor from Ravinder Verma. Is the DR storage platform independent? It is absolutely platform independent. We install agents at the guest level on physical and virtual servers and replicate this to our storage arrays. We are able to replicate that up to a remote facility, and we run a variety of storages. Sometimes we kind of focus a little bit on the NetApp because we have a direct interface to them as well, but we run EMC, HP, FreePAR, a variety of other storage platforms that we can cover. We're basically storage agnostic is the way I'd look at it. Are there any other questions?
No.
Okay. I think we're done with questions. I was going to go into a demo, and I'm going to have Raymond Sue run this demo, and we're going to have him kind of show you what the console looks like, and we'll field any technical questions after that. There you go. There you go.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Our Nscaled recovery console is where our clients are going to do the majority of their monitoring and management of their DR environment. It's a web-based dashboard, and when you first log in, you'll come right to our front page, which gives you a real-time view of specific statistics on your environment itself. Along the top here, we have some tabs, and I'll go through each one of these. But on the front page here, we have some widgets, and each one of these provides critical information. The first one is called Remote Cloud Connectivity, and here's where you're going to see the amount of storage that you're uploading to our cloud data center over a period of time. We break it out by transmit and receive, and by data center, whether you are in our one of our facilities in Texas or in Virginia or even in the UK. As you can see, in my demo environment, we take snapshots every hour. So I'm going to see a spike here every hour. And if you see a particularly large one, you can actually zoom in on that area, and it'll break that out and get more granular information as far as how much data was uploaded at a certain time. You can go back even up to a year on the statistics. The next one is called Recovery Point Objective, and this is probably the most critical of our widgets. And here's where a client's going to see the health status of the snapshots themselves. So like I said, we take snapshots every hour. So as long as my snapshots are being taken on an hourly basis and are current, the status is going to remain green. If for some reason the snapshot's missed and maybe the server's offline or there's a network connectivity issue to our local appliance and it goes beyond 2 hours, it'll go to a yellow status. And once it goes beyond 4 hours, it'll go to a red status. And once it goes yellow or red, we generate an email to the client so that way they're aware that there's an issue. There's also a secondary column here, so as you can see, like this particular snapshot's current, but it's 1 hour old, so I know in a few seconds a new snapshot's going to be taken, and then this clock will start over. None of these should ever go over 1 hour. All right. So our next widgets here, we have latest alerts, and then we have latest events. Alerts are critical things that may affect your environment. We allow clients to actually create their own alerts. When they have primary servers running with us, they can set their own thresholds in regards to CPU and memory. Events are simple things like logins, logoffs, activation of a recovery server, and that type of thing. If you wanted to see beyond the last 10 of each of these, you can come up here to the monitoring tab, and here's where you're going to see all of your alerts and all of your events historically, so you can go back as far as you want. You can actually sort them by user as well, so you can see what user is doing what in your environment. Okay, our next widgets here is called data growth, and here's where you're going to see the amount of storage that you're using in our cloud data center. And we break it up by the 4 different types of storage that we offer. We have continuity storage and long-term storage. Both of these are related to our appliance-based solution. Continuity is where your snapshots are first replicated to, because when your snapshots are taken of your servers, they're first taken and saved to your local appliance. Then from the local appliance, they're replicated to our cloud. And the first place they land is continuity. This is where they're going to be fully bootable and mountable, so immediately available to you. Typically, clients will save their snapshots in continuity from anywhere from 7 to 21 days. And if a client wants to use those snapshots for backup purposes, so they wanted to save them for 2 years, 3 years, even 5 years, we also offer long-term storage. So if a client has long-term storage with us, we will automatically move those snapshots from continuity to long-term. And the difference being is that in long-term, it's a lower cost tier storage, and the storage is no longer bootable, but still mountable. So you can always access that data if you need to recover files, but you can't boot it up anymore. But no one's going to need to boot up a server from 6 months ago if they have an outage. So this is a nice feature that we offer that for clients that want to use this for backup. We also have NetApp storage as well for clients that have a NetApp array. We will utilize native SnapMirror and SnapVault technology to act as a SnapMirror destination for those clients. And then we also have a product called File Level Backup, where we will install a small virtual appliance on a client's network that monitors a CIF share and back that up, typically on an hourly basis, and upload those files to the cloud for protection of those files. Once again, you can go back 7 days, 30 days, up to a year on this statistic. And our final widget here is called entitlements. Entitlements is going to be used for capacity planning purposes. Here's where a client's going to see the amount of capacity that they've purchased from us and what they're currently utilizing. So they would know well in advance whether or not they need to do some cleanup work or adjust their retention policies, or they may choose to add additional capacity on their contract. It's completely up to the client how they want to handle that. All right? So our next tab here is called servers. Servers are, this is where a client's going to see all of the servers that are in their environment, whether they are primary servers that are running live and active, or the local recovery snapshots that are on their appliance, or the remote recovery snapshots that have been replicated to our cloud data center. So as you can see, if I uncheck my snapshot boxes, I've got 8 servers that are running live in my environment. I've got 2 different locations, one in Ashburn, one in Dallas. I've got a domain controller in each, an Exchange server, a couple of database servers, and in Ashburn I've got a Red Hat instance as well as a file server. Of these 8 servers, I'm protecting these 5 in Ashburn locally. So if I come to my local recovery site, I can see here that I've got my 5 snapshots of those servers. My local appliance is going to be my first line of defense when it comes to recovery of the server. My local appliance typically has enough resources to activate 2 or 3 different VMs and run them in production. My local appliance is already sitting on my production network, so when I activate one of these snapshots, it would simply show up on my network as if it was my production server. I'd have to make sure my production server is actually offline so there's no network conflicts, but I can activate this at any time. So for instance, if my database server went down this morning, I have a RAID 5 array in my database server and I lost 2 drives. I can simply come to my local appliance, and here are all my snapshots. Like I said, we take them every hour. I can select any one of these and click the Activate button. I also have the option of activating this as an iSCSI. So if I simply needed to recover data from this, I can put in my IQN initiator name and point this to another workstation or another server, and this snapshot would simply show up as a local drive on that server, and I can use Windows Explorer to recover data for that. But the key feature about our Nscale solution is not only can you activate locally, you can also activate remotely in the cloud. So as you can see, here are all my servers that I'm protecting. These servers are now being also protected in Dallas in my local recovery site, my remote recovery site. If I click on my database server, I have all my snapshots here that have been replicated. Activation is the same way. I simply click on a time mark and I click Activate. In the cloud, there's a difference though. In the cloud, we give you multiple VLANs. So I can either bring this up on my production VLAN or my test VLAN. So if I actually needed to bring this up on and connect to it from my production site, I can bring it up on production. And as soon as the server came online, it would authenticate against my domain controller in the cloud and then present itself on my network. We also give every client a test VLAN. And a test VLAN is a completely isolated VLAN that never traverses outside of the data center, and it's used as basically as your own personal sandbox. So this gives you the ability to test these snapshots at any time, even during production hours, and you don't have to worry about it causing any conflicts on your network because it never communicates with your production your production network. So it's going through its activation process now. Right now it's scanning my multi-tenant compute nodes for resources. It's allocating CPU and memory. It's going to scan my virtual SAN for resources and mount that storage to a data store. It'll validate the IPs for this cloud activation, and then actually begin building and powering up a brand new virtual machine. We don't actually copy VMDK files from one side to the next. We take snapshots of a disk. So every time you activate a snapshot, we actually build a brand new virtual machine from scratch and power that up. So as you can see, that the activation process is completed. In a few minutes, when it goes live, I'll start getting CPU and memory and IOPS utilization numbers here in the graph. It's gone into a starting mode, and it'll be up in about in less than 3 or 4 minutes. I also have a new tab that pops open. It's called VMRC, and VMRC stands for Virtual Machine Remote Console, and this will give me a console session into this server that's coming on live. All right. So we'll let this go and come up. My storage tab serves a couple of different purposes. My storage tab, if I'm a client with file level backup protection, I'm going to see my CIF shares that are being protected here under storage. So as you can see, I've got 3 different CIF shares that I'm protecting. This doc share is a CIF share that's running off of my file server in Ashburn. I'm protecting this to Dallas, and it's protecting it every hour. This would allow me to recover files or subdirectories from this for my file server at any time. The other purpose of the storage tab is for a NetApp client. So if we are protecting NetApp volumes through SnapMirror or SnapVault, I'm going to see all of my NetApp volumes here as well. And this is where I would come to activate those volumes and mount them, and then be able to activate the servers that are running on them. Okay, so that's our storage tab. And our final tab here is our support tab. Support tab is where a client's going to come to create a support ticket. In the event they're having an issue, they can come and simply create a support ticket, set their priority level, critical to low, put some information about the issue they're having. They can actually upload a log file or a screen capture or something for our client support team and hit submit. And they would also see a running list of all of their support tickets here on this list as well, so they can come back at any time and see the status of that support ticket. Our resources tab is where our clients are going to find all of our documentation, whether it's an installation guide or an implementation documentation guide or any of our software. So if a client needed to find the latest agent, they wanted to add a new server for protection, they can come here and download the latest agents as well. We have OSSV agents, we have snapshot agents for various applications. We also have our updated disk safe agents as well. Under our documentation, number 7, we have something called a runbook template. And our runbook template's always been available to our clients, and this is something a client's going to complete during their initial DR testing. Every client environment is going to be a little different, and during your initial DR testing, the client's going to find things that need to be adjusted or changed in some way in order to work in our cloud environment. It may be an application that calls out a database server by IP. Well, the IP is going to be different in the cloud, so that's going to have to be adjusted. It may be a DNS change. It could be a call out to an outside vendor where a URL needs to be changed. Something is going to be found that needs to be adjusted during your initial test. And all of that, once it's found, should be documented in this runbook template. So when it comes time to where you actually need to run in a DR environment or scenario, you'll know what to expect and you'll know exactly how to handle that. All right, but we had just released a new feature that we call an automated runbook. So if I come to my admin screen now, I come to runbooks. we now give you the capability to automate that functionality. In the past, when a client needed to activate in a DR environment, they would come to the server tab, they would activate their servers one at a time and bring those online. We now can do that automatically by clicking on a couple different buttons. Gives you the ability to activate your entire scenario automatically. You can create multiple runbooks as well, so you can create a runbook just for your financial department servers, or just your engineering department servers. Or suppose you have multiple locations and you have multiple data centers, you can activate, just your Salt Lake City data center, or just your Chicago data center. So this is a very powerful feature. So if I come to my sales runbook, I can see here that process where I went through, where I just activated that SQL server, I can actually automate that whole functionality, where step 1, I need to make sure my domain controller is operational. Step 2, I'm going to activate my SQL server as well as my Exchange server. Step 3, I have a manual step. A manual step is going to be where you have your custom functionality where you need to change something. And there's no way for us to actually do that for you, since we can't log into your domain. We don't have domain logins. We don't have access to your systems, and we don't want those. We actually give you the ability to add a manual step. So once the automated function steps are completed, it comes to a manual step. It'll stop. It'll generate an email, and the body of the email will be the manual step. So in this case, it would be login and validate. So then I simply log into the system. There will be a confirm button here right underneath login and validate. I hit confirm after it's been completed, and then the system will continue on with its automated steps until the next manual step, or until the whole runbook is completed. Very powerful, like I said. When you run it, you're given some options. I can run it in my test mode, or I can run it in my failover mode. I can pick either the most recent snapshot, or I can pick a particular one. Say I wanted to test the snapshot from yesterday between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. I can choose that one, and boom, the system will automatically go back to that point in time. I have some notification options here. I want to be emailed when there is a manual step. I want to be notified when the runbook completes. I click run, and the system simply goes. Adding additional steps, it's a simple matter of just dragging on to the next step. I want to activate another server. I'm given a list of my servers here. Right now it only works with your remote recovery servers. In the future we will be adding local recovery as well. So I simply select my server. There's some options here. I can skip if there's an error. I can skip if it's already completed. So if it's already running, the automated step will just bypass and it'll continue. I also have some options here where I can activate it as a server, or if I simply needed the data, I can activate it as an iSCSI LUN, and then I can simply point it to another server, and that simply shows up as a local drive to that server. Multiple options here. This is our first iteration of a runbook. We're going to be adding additional features. We also give you a document holding area here, so if you have a runbook template already completed, you can drag it here, save it. If you have spreadsheets for your IP addressing or your DNS information, you can drag those here. If you have a Visio diagram of your environment, that would help you. You can drag that here. All of your DR documentation is in one place on your DR remote console. Very powerful, like I said. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Eric for additional questions if you guys have it. And thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, so what we wanted to do is we wanted to open the floor to any questions on the presentation or on the demonstration that we just did. We're happy to kind of address those questions at this time. So we have a question from John Schmidt for Raymond. What's the total deployment time frame? What typically is expected?
Well, let's see, make sure I'm off mute. All right. When it comes to deployment, it depends on the size of the environment and the amount of data that we are uploading. There are things that are consistent in regards to like setting up the VPN tunnel. That can take a bit of time depending on the resources involved from both sides. There's going to be configuration of the environment, and then the majority majority of the time is going to be the actual replication. So like I said, it depends on data and depends on the throughput of the network connectivity. Typical implementation is anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks total.
Okay. We have another question from Tim Johnson. How do you manage permissions in the remote facility?
How do you manage permissions?
I think it's a question related to Active Directory.
Yeah, well, we provide all of our clients with an Active Directory server. That server is basically another domain controller in your forest, and you would manage it just like you manage your existing domain controller. It would be as if you had another domain controller at a remote site. It's yours. It's your login. It's fully synchronized to your domain. We don't have access to it. You would go in and change your passwords once we provide it to you, and it's as if it's another domain controller for you.
Okay. We have a couple questions. So can we ship that local device to create a backup of servers and ship it back? Basically, that's seeding data. And go ahead and answer that question, Raymond, from Scott Jonell.
Yep. We actually have a seeding device that we can provide. It's an additional charge, and we would ship that out to you. You would seed it and ship it back to us, to our data center, and then we would upload the data from that. We don't use the local appliance for that. It's a separate device that we provide.
I think that's all the questions that we have at this time. I want to let you know that we will have this on our website in about a day. We'll be also sending a link to it here shortly to all the attendees. And I want to thank Craig and Jeff for attending and presenting and giving us their thoughts on the topic. And we look forward to seeing you guys in the future. Any final comments, Jeff?
I'd just like to thank everybody for their time, and if you have any additional questions that you'd like to ask offline, please feel free to contact me directly. And you have got, I believe, my contact information on the last slide. If not, AssurityRiver.com is our URL, and you can first initial, last name, JOLEJNIK at AssurityRiver.com. Appreciate everybody's time, and thank you, Eric, and thank you, Raymond and Craig.
Thanks again, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.